This week's Parshat, Acharei Mot-Kedoshim, is coming up shortly, and my name is Rabbi Gottlieb, and I wanted to share with you a few words of Torah commentary on this week's Parsha, actually focusing on Kedoshim. The question is, how do we attain Kedusha, holiness? There are several paths to this. And when I was in Israel years ago studying in yeshiva, Rabbi Feldman said over a word, the name of the Maral, which suggests two paths to tshuva. One was the path of Yehuda, the other was the path of Yosef. Yosef's path was to remove himself from any trials that would remove him from a state of holiness. And he suggested that his engagement with Potipharah, his removing himself from what could have been evil, could have been something that was sinful, led him to the path of Kedusha. That Kedusha means removing yourself from trials that will lead you to sin, and engage yourself in a separate community that is engaged in Kedusha. Then there's the path of Yehuda. Yehuda, he was explaining, entered into Tamar, entered into someone who appeared to be blackened and darkened at that moment, and brought light, brought Kedusha into that liaison and transformed it into a being of light. In actuality, Tamar was already higher on some level than Yehuda, and that's another teaching, that there's no such thing as absolute darkness, but it's the path to Kedusha by entering the world, bringing the light, bringing the holiness into the world and transforming it is another path to Kedusha. It's similar to what Rashi says about Prushim Tiyu, that would be the path of Yosef, and the Ramban would be closer to the path of Yehuda. So Torat Chayim says something very interesting about this as well, based on the first verse in Kedoshim. He says that, it says, Daber al kol dat b'nei Yisrael v'amarta alehem Kedoshim tiyu, ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem. So it says Kedoshim tiyu, and he says that the path to holiness can be achieved by an individual to a certain level by willfully engaging in the mitzvot, being conscious of bringing oneself closer to God through the mitzvot, after a sense of prushim, of separating yourself, but then to be dovek to Hashem through becoming a holy soul. But he points out, it says, Ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokechem, to say that the act itself, the consummation and the totality of the act, can only be completed by an act of grace by God, a gift from God bestowed upon a human being, when the human being begins that path. When the human being is engaged in mitzvot, and every part of his body or her body becomes a vessel of holiness, a holy mishkan, then God enters into this union, and you become godlike. You become, because God is kadosh as well. This is very, very elevating, because doing a mitzvah is different than just doing a good deed. A mitzvah has to be done with a consciousness of joining. The word mitzvah itself is lashon tzatza, joining yourself through the deed, through Hashem, and connecting to the essence of you who are born b'tzelem Elokim and have a dimension of Hashem within you, to embody it and become actualized, becomes a reality when you engage in the mitzvot. The other thing that Torat Chayim points out that's so beautiful, it says, Daber al kol adat b'nei Yisrael, not just Daber al b'nei Yisrael, but in order to attain a sense of total Kedusha, we have to be connected to a group sense, to a group identity, to adat b'nei Yisrael. And that's when our spirit, our Kedusha is elevated, when we feel other people's energies all engaged in this path of Kedusha. When we connect to the path, to the past as well, and to the present with holy communities, we feel a sense of Kedusha. It's the same thing with the Jewish people at Har Sinai when they say, Vayichanam, the Jews dwelt as one at the base of the mountain, and therefore they were worthy of receiving the Torah. It's the same when we leave Mitzrayim and we march through this Omer period, cleansing ourselves, moving closer and closer to Kedusha, we become worthy of receiving the Torah. So may we all be blessed to keep working toward Kedusha and have the grace of Hashem's presence, Hashem who loves us and sees that through our deeds we become the very one who we're meant to be. The final thing that Netivat Shalom says that's very interesting is that every Jew is capable of reaching a level of Kedusha. It's part of the essence of being created B'Tselem Elokim. Each one has a separate task, and each one reaches a different level. I remember when I was a Hillel director at MIT many years ago, we had Bible study every week with Christian ministers, Catholic priest, and we finished Breshit and Shemot. We came to the book of Vayikra, Leviticus, and the minister said, let us skip Leviticus because it's just filled with sacrifices. There's nothing that's elevating to us here. And I was a little astounded, but I pointed out to him, let's open up to chapter 19 in the book of Leviticus, verses 16 and 17. And I said, let's read it. And they were shocked that V'yahavta l'recha kamocha was found, love your neighbor as yourself, in the Hebrew scriptures. They thought it was just part of the Christian texts. And it was a transforming moment for them to reconnect in a deeper level to their Jewish brothers and sisters. Interestingly, these two verses always were very meaningful to me as a psychologist. We read, it says, Lo tisna rechicha bilvavecha, hochiach tochiach es amisecha, lo tisa alav chet, then lo tikam lo titor b'nei amecha, v'yahavta l'recha kamocha, ani Adonai. So it says that you should not hate your neighbor in your heart. You should surely reprove them, correct them as amisecha, as if they were close to you. Love your neighbor as yourself. The teaching is, if you do not speak directly and honestly to somebody else about your feelings, you come to hate them in your heart, and it prevents you from getting to the level of loving your neighbor as yourself. Interestingly, Reb Nachman of Brassov says something very profound about the verse V'yahavta l'recha kamocha as well. He says if you look at the root Re'ah, you find the letters Reish Aleph, Reish Ayin, which means Ra. So he says this verse should mean love the evil, love the shadow within yourself. That every human being has both Ra and Tov within. And if you separate the Ra and think you're only good, you tend to project the evil that you can't face within yourself onto others, and the world becomes split between the good and the bad. I am good and you're bad. If you could engage with the shadow within yourself, those parts that you may be ashamed of and haven't integrated, and realize that we're all imperfect, and integrate that and work on that, we tend to have greater compassion for others who also are imperfect. We don't judge them, and this is what leads to holiness in the whole world. If we think we are good and they are evil, it only leads to strife and tachrut, competitiveness, and projection onto others, and a lack of recognition of the depth and the complexity of the self. The world was created with the first letter in the Torah with a bet, which is a duality. This is a world of complexity. We have both good and evil in ourselves. It could have been created with the Aleph, the first letter of the alphabet, but that's a naive consciousness. It's a desire to go back to Aleph, to oneness, to the Garden of Eden, or to death, but it's really an escape from stress and the way we're truly created. Aleph is Arur. This is a world of bet, of dualities. God created us this way, nor to integrate them and to grow from them. And the bed is open on the fourth side to fill in this fourth side, this incomplete world, to join with God in Kedusha, and bet is bracha, blessing. So may we be strengthened to either follow the view of Rashi, of Ramban, to separate ourselves into communities, or to go out into the world and engage with them and reach a state of Kedusha where we will be graced with God's energy of Kedusha within us. We become vehicles of Kedusha, make this world a place that is meant to be together with a community that will strengthen us. And that is the Jewish way. And we say, Amen. Shabbat Shalom, and have a beautiful Shabbos. Shalom.